Right now there are 8 billion humans on Earth. But 40,000 years ago, there were two kinds of us. One of them is sitting in front of a screen watching this video. The other one disappeared. But here's what nobody talks about. They weren't wiped out by war. They weren't too stupid to survive. They made jewelry. They played music. They buried their dead with flowers. The only difference between them and us was that we were better at building networks. But what if they figured that out? What if instead of disappearing 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals adapted, survived, and are still here today? What does the world look like? Do we get along? Do we compete? Do we even consider them human? This is Other Timeline. And today, we're going there. First, let's destroy everything you think you know about Neanderthals. They were not stupid cavemen grunting at each other. Their brains were actually larger than ours. Not more complex, but larger. They had the same FOXP2 gene that gives humans the ability to speak, which means they could talk. They made pigment-based body paint, which means they cared about how they looked. They crafted eagle talon jewelry, which means they had a concept of beauty and status. They buried their dead, which means they understood loss and possibly believed in something beyond death. They cooked complex meals, used medicinal plants, and took care of elderly and injured members of their group who couldn't contribute to survival. Let that sink in. 40,000 years ago, there was a species of human that carried their injured, not because it helped them survive, but because they cared. So why did they disappear? The answer is more surprising than you think, and it only makes this alternate timeline more believable. For decades, the popular theory was simple. We killed them. Homo sapiens arrived in Europe. Neanderthals were in the way, and we wiped them out. But a study published in April 2026 turned that theory upside down. The real reason Neanderthals disappeared was not violence. It was networking. Homo sapiens lived in larger, more connected groups. We traded with strangers. We shared information across long distances. We built alliances with people we'd never met. Neanderthals lived in tight, isolated family groups. Small, efficient, but completely cut off from each other. When disease hit a Neanderthal group, the whole group died. When disease hit a sapiens group, survivors found another group, shared what they'd learned, and kept moving. We didn't defeat them in battle. We simply outconnected them. Now here's where the alternate timeline begins. What if, around 50,000 years ago, just before our paths crossed, one Neanderthal group changed that pattern? What if one group started trading, started building alliances, started connecting? Everything after that moment changes completely. It's 48,000 BCE. Somewhere in what is now modern-day France, a group of Neanderthals encounters a group of Homo sapiens near a river. In our timeline, this meeting eventually leads to the Neanderthals being absorbed and disappearing. In this timeline, something different happens. A Neanderthal elder, bigger, stronger, more experienced in the landscape, offers shelter in exchange for knowledge of fire-making techniques the sapiens carried from the East. It's a trade, a small one, but it's the first link in a chain. Over the next 1,000 years, slowly, imperfectly, with plenty of conflict along the way, Neanderthal groups start connecting with each other, and sometimes with us. They don't disappear, they adapt. And by 30,000 BCE, instead of one human species spreading across the planet, there are two. Now, fast forward. Two human species, 40,000 years of parallel development. Where does that lead? Neanderthals were physically built for cold environments. Wider bodies, larger lungs, stronger bones. They would have dominated northern Europe and Central Asia, the harsh, cold territories that Homo sapiens found difficult to inhabit. Homo sapiens, more agile, more adaptable to diverse climates, would have spread through Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Americas. Not a clean division. There would be border zones, mixed territories, and within those zones, both cooperation and conflict. But here's what's fascinating about Neanderthal civilization. Because of their physical strength and cold adaptation, their architecture would likely be different, heavier, built into the earth and rock rather than upward. Their cities wouldn't look like ours. They'd look like they grew out of the landscape itself. Their medicine, already based on plants we know they used, might have developed along completely different lines than ours. Not better or worse, just different. And their social structures, tight, family-based, deeply loyal, might have produced a very different kind of government than the large anonymous states humans built. Smaller, more personal, more like a network of extended families than a nation. By the time we reach the modern era, there isn't one dominant human civilization. There are two, running in parallel, trading, competing, occasionally going to war, and in the border zones, mixing.
So here's the question that makes this really uncomfortable. It's 2026. Both the species exist. You walk outside and you see them. What is your world actually like? First, the biology. Modern humans already carry about 2% Neanderthal DNA because of ancient interbreeding. In this timeline, that mixing never stopped. There would be a spectrum of humans, from fully Neanderthal to fully sapiens, with every variation in between. The concept of race as we know it doesn't exist. It's replaced by something far more complicated. Second, the politics. Two species with different cognitive styles, different physical capabilities, different cultural values, sharing the same planet. The history of this world would be filled with the same conflicts we know, but amplified. Civil rights movements, fighting not for racial equality, but for interspecies equality. Are they citizens? Do they vote? Can they own property? These are not abstract questions in this world. They are the defining political battles of every century. Third, and this is the part nobody thinks about, the technology. Neanderthal cognitive style was different from ours. Studies suggest they were better at certain types of spatial reasoning and physical problem solving, while Homo sapiens were better at abstract and symbolic thinking. In this world, those two cognitive styles developed in parallel for 40,000 years. The technology they built might be completely unrecognizable to us. Not more advanced, not less advanced, just different. Which means when the two civilizations eventually share technology, the combination might produce innovations that neither species could have reached alone. It's possible that in this timeline, humanity as a whole is further ahead than we are in ours. Or it's possible that the constant competition between two dominant species slowed everything down. We genuinely don't know. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes this timeline terrifying and fascinating at the same time. Here's what I keep coming back to when I think about this timeline. The reason Neanderthals disappeared in our world wasn't that they were inferior. It wasn't that they were less intelligent, less capable, or less deserving of survival. It was one thing. They didn't connect with strangers. They trusted family. They trusted their group. And that trust didn't extend far enough. That single behavioral difference, the willingness to build networks with people you don't know, is the reason you exist and they don't. And here's the uncomfortable question that leaves me with. If Neanderthals had survived, what would they think of the world we built? Would they see a species that used its talent for connection to create something worth being proud of? Or would they see a species that connected with everyone and somehow still managed to feel completely alone? I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's worth sitting with. This is Other Timeline, where we explore the worlds that almost were. If this made you think, subscribe, because we're just getting started.